Hello there, and welcome to Dudes Being Guys Sports Podcast, Episode 2. My name is Marco Yerkovich, and joining me is...
Easton Nelson.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing our top 5 running backs in the NFL, the Urban Meyer suspension, Adrian Peterson signing with Washington, and Daniel Murphy being traded to the Cubs, and much more. All right, Easton, let's get into it with your top 5 running backs in the NFL.
All right, starting off, I have number 5, I have Jordan Howard. This might come as a surprise to a lot of people, but I think Jordan Howard's one of the best running backs in the league, obviously, with his ability to truck, to his elusiveness, his ability to get to the end zone. And, I mean, there's not very many players that are better than Jordan Howard in the league.
Yeah, and I think, especially just with how terrible the Chicago Bears offensive line is, it's just a testament to how good of a running back he is.
Yeah, he's one of the major key players on the Bears, one of the few. At number 4, I have Ezekiel Elliott. It'll be interesting to see him, as it seems like, to me at least, that it's been forever since I've watched him play an NFL game, even though it hasn't been that long. But I love his running style and his agility and elusiveness to get around players, and he's just super fun to watch.
Yeah, and he's also got probably, if not Oakland, he's probably got the best offensive line in the NFL, which definitely helps.
Definitely. At number 3, I have David Johnson. He's coming off that injury, and we'll see how he bounces back. I mean, it could go either really well, or he's just another one of those players that isn't as good because of his injury. But I love his explosiveness and his will to get to the end zone. At number 2, I have Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley is probably the best all-around running back. He can truck through anybody. He has enough speed to get past people. But I'd like to see him be a better receiver coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, I think he's actually going to have to get better at that, because Sean McVay, with his offensive mastery, is probably going to try and use Gurley as a receiver quite often. Whether he's doing it out of the backfield or actually lining up in the slot, he's going to be used as a receiver quite a bit.
Yeah.
He's really going to have to improve on that. But as a pure wide receiver goes, he's definitely one of the best in the league.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And at number 1, I have Le'Veon Bell. His run style is like no other. He waits for that gap to open. He just explodes. It's super fun to learn and watch. And Steelers fans, you should appreciate him while you have him, because who knows what's going to happen after this year.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not going to say a ton more because I definitely have him on my list. But yeah, definitely one of the best running backs in the NFL. All right, going on to my list. At 5, I have Ezekiel Elliott. Obviously had a tremendous rookie season. I actually think he should have won Offensive Rookie of the Year over Dak Prescott.
I agree, yeah.
You know, Ezekiel Elliott is just one of those specimens. He's just one of the pure athletes in the NFL. It does help that he has one of the best, probably the second best offensive line in the league, but he's still a tremendous player.
He might be getting that DeMarco Murray treatment. Like, he was really good that one season. He goes to the Eagles. You don't really see him much, but I hope he does well.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll really fall off the face of the earth, but anyway, at number 4, I kind of cheated a little bit. I basically have the New Orleans Saints running back tandem of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. I think they're both just so good at what they do. Kamara's probably the better receiver, Ingram the better pure running back, but them together, that 1-2 punch, is probably the best in the league, of course, as 1-2 punches go, but together they're really unstoppable.
Yeah, Kamara, he's one of my favorite players in the NFL. Even after just one season, he's just super fun to watch. The Saints, great team. He should be able to get them farther.
All right, then at number 3, I have LaShawn McCoy. I think Shady McCoy is probably one of the most elusive runners in the NFL, and he's still probably one of the fastest. I know you didn't have him on your list, but I just think he just has an instinct of where to go, where the opening is. He's just such a natural-born runner.
Yeah, the reason I didn't have him on my list was, I don't know, I feel like he's kind of fallen off. I mean, he's getting up there in age, isn't he?
Yeah, getting close to 30.
30, yeah. I mean, that's just going to happen with age, but his name just doesn't pop to me anymore like these other 5 that I have on my list do.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing, and he's probably going to go lower and lower on this list as the seasons go on, and we'll see where he is next season, but for now I have him at 3. At number 2 from the Los Angeles Rams, I have Todd Gurley. As you said, just such a pure talent at running back, and he's just so enjoyable to watch, but his trucking ability is so good.
Oh, yeah.
And for a player of his size, you wouldn't expect him to be as fast as he is, and when he breaks through to that second level, he's much faster than linebackers. It's absurd. It really is for a man of that size to move the way he does is just enjoyable to watch, and it's just fun to watch.
And that's why I hope he's on my fantasy team this year.
Yeah, you think you're gonna get him?
I
You'd
hope
have to
so.
draft him real
Pretty early,
early. Yeah,
probably first round if
yeah,
I have an early enough pick.
yeah. And at number one, as you do, have Le'Veon Bell. I think he is the best running back in the league when he plays. Of course,
Yeah,
he's had contract disputes in the past, and he might in the future. And who knows how long he'll even be in the league? Might even retire after the season. But as you said, his ability to move horizontally as opposed to just running straight into
it's so
things.
different.
Yeah,
So
the way he stops, the way he uses pauses and change of direction is so just creative and talented. He's such a just elusive, amazing runner.
and I think Le'Veon Bell, he's not like the video game running back. Like you wouldn't want him in like a video game because he's not like boom. He's not the most fast running back. I mean, he's not slow, but he's not the best trucker. But in real life, he's just like the way he can get through the hole is just unstoppable.
Yeah, and he has, as you said, he doesn't necessarily have a lot of the tangible skills, but it's the technique that he's got down. It's
It's
kind
an
of like
art.
that. Yeah, it's like Rodgers is probably the better pure specimen as Gurley is at running back, but Brady and Bell are just better because of the technique, the little things they do that just makes them so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, with that, let's move on to another running back in the NFL who's not on either of our lists. Adrian Peterson signed with Washington a couple days ago. After 10 seasons, 7 Pro Bowls, and an NFL MVP, Peterson ended his illustrious career with the Minnesota Vikings in 2016. He then signed a 2-year deal with the New Orleans Saints, but after being pushed to the third string by Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, he was traded to the Cardinals. On October 10th, he was traded to the Cardinals for a conditional 6th-round pick, and in March he was released by Arizona, and on August 20th he was signed by Washington.
First off, I want to say I kind of forgot he played for the Saints. I don't know why, but I forgot he played for the
Yeah,
Saints.
he played. Remember, in Week 1 he played against the Vikings, and the
Yeah.
Vikings beat the Saints.
Yeah, that's right.
Dalvin
That's right.
Cook beat his rookie rushing record.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, I'll start off by saying I don't know how much Adrian Peterson still has left in the tank. I mean, he's one of the probably the oldest running back in the NFL, maybe. I don't know. He's up there though.
The oldest first string running
First
back
string,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I mean, he didn't really do much last year in Arizona or in New Orleans, but I still think he can maybe be a positive piece for Washington. But we'll just have to see what happens.
I mean, yeah, last year, I mean, it was pretty forgettable, and he missed, I think, week 13 on because of I think a neck injury.
Neck, yeah.
But I mean, he still had 156 rushes for 529 yards and 2 TDs. I mean, that's not Adrian Peterson
No.
numbers, but that's not terrible for a guy. He was averaging about 4.5 yards a carry, which is still really good.
Yeah, he's still.
And he's 33 years old, 12th season. We'll see how much he can really do, but we'll see what he can bring to the table for Washington, honestly.
Yeah, I think he's still a serviceable running back.
Oh, definitely. But the problem is going to be that Washington, they lost Samaje Perine to an ACL. Also, the new running back Darius Guice from LSU that they got in the 2nd or 3rd round, he's also out with an ACL. And I think their 3rd string running back is also out for, I think, an Achilles, and he's out for the season. So their running back pool has drastically dried up, and he's going to have to be a bigger piece than you would think.
Oh yeah. Hopefully they can find somebody else because who knows how much Adrian Peterson's gonna do for you.
Yeah, and I think one more injury, and I think Adrian Peterson is probably done in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's probably on his last few legs here, and another injury would probably end his quite illustrious career.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years left probably in his career. Then he's done.
Yeah, I think so too. At 33, again, 12th season in the NFL. Granted, he had a couple injury-ridden seasons and the suspension season, so it's not really 12, but he still has a lot of carries on his legs. But, we'll see if he can bounce back. All right. So next up, we have one of our first segments of the show. If you watched episode 1, we didn't have these upcoming segments, but we've added these, and it's going to be fun to have these every week. So this first segment is called Nostradamus. And if you know who Nostradamus is, he was a philosopher, I believe, quite a few centuries ago, and many conspiracy theorists believe that he may have predicted a lot of crazy events that have happened in American and world history. So that's where we get the name Nostradamus. And today's pick is my own. I have the Boston Red Sox. I have them finishing with 116 wins this season. Only the 1906 Chicago Cubs and 2001 Seattle Mariners have ever won 116 games. The Red Sox are currently 88 and 39 and would need to finish 28 and 7. Do you think this is a reasonable pick?
Uh, I mean, the Red Sox are probably the best team in the American League. I have them going to the World Series in the American League half, but that's a lot of games to win.
Yeah, 28 and 7 is actually right on the nose of 80% of your games. That's quite a bit to win,
I mean,
especially this late in the season.
it depends on who they're playing, what their strength of schedule is for this last half, but we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they can do it, but that's gonna be a tough road.
But they clearly have the best team in the AL. Mookie Betts and JD Martinez are probably both AL MVP candidates, and
Yep.
their pitching unit is absurd. Chris Sale, David Price, Rick Porcello, of course, Kimbrel as a closer. I mean, they're probably the most talented pitching group in the MLB, atop of like one of the best offenses.
Yeah, I agree. Their rotation is definitely top three at least, and just their position by position, they have a well-known MLB player. Like, you ask anybody that knows anything about baseball, they probably know every player on that team.
Oh yeah, and Benintendi in left field and Rafael Devers at third base. Those are guys in like their early 20s.
Yeah, they're all pretty young.
Yeah, and this could last for a really long time.
Yeah.
Maybe not the pitching, but at least the field players are so young that we could see this team for the next 5 to 10
Definitely.
years. All right, well, next up in our topics list is the NFL preseason injuries that just continue to stack up. I think week 3 hasn't even started yet, and we have a huge list of injuries. So first off, before we start kind of listing some, your thoughts on the preseason, should it be played, how we could prevent injuries, what we could do to just stop this crazy amount of injuries from happening.
I mean, the preseason to me is just a good look at. It's not necessarily about the starters. It's more about giving the younger talents and the rookies a chance to play on an NFL stage and see what they can bring to the table. But I mean, the preseason, it doesn't mean much. I mean, I don't get why we have to sit here 4 extra weeks and watch football that doesn't matter. Really, like it's annoying to me. But I mean, the injuries that come with preseason, like what we're gonna name, there's a few big names, and it's not a good thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the big problem is that you kind of stated in kind of a light manner, but is also kind of an enormous problem for a lot of these teams is these games don't matter at all. I mean, you have a preseason record, but that doesn't matter. And the big issue is, do you want to play your big players to kind of get them ready for the season, or is that what practice is for? I guess you could also play something into, like, obviously you said bringing in the younger talent, but also the fans are paying money to see these games. Do they want to see the big stars, or do they know they're coming to see a preseason game and want to see the younger talent? Your thoughts on that?
I think you have to. Well, there's different perspectives. I mean, the owners are gonna want to have a preseason game because they make money, but I guess they could also think that their stars could get hurt, and I don't know. It's just I feel like other owners, they all have different perspectives on it, and like I mean, the players. I mean, has there really been a player that said that they have or haven't really wanted to play? I mean, I don't know. I don't think the preseason is a good thing overall. But
Yeah, but it is a give and take, as you said. The money, like these owners and the league in general rejecting the money would be enormous, and I don't think it'll ever happen. But I guess if you get to a tipping point where there's enough injuries to both in preseason and that would affect the regular season and postseason, if you eventually hit a tipping point where there's enough players injured where the preseason becomes an issue to where you're making less money as a league because you have less stars playing in the regular and postseason, then I think you could eventually see the preseason dissolve. But in its current state, it's not becoming as a big enough a problem as it needs to be to even garner a ton of attention to the league. I think it's just going to continue to being played, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on maybe like alternate rules, maybe eliminating kickoffs in preseason games, or like maybe make them 10-minute quarters, just ways to prevent these injuries?
Yeah, I mean they're trying with the new helmet rules, which isn't getting taken very well. But I don't know necessarily about kickoffs because there's not very many injuries on kickoffs, I don't think. I mean, you don't see them as often as during regular play but I mean, I think they could do shorter games or maybe like they do at spring games, maybe make the quarterback not uh like he can't get tackled or I don't know. I mean,
Just anything to solve these injuries, because it's really bothersome. Because you look at this list, and we're probably not going to read off this whole list, but
yeah.
there's a lot of uh, important franchise talent, or at least starters on this
Yeah.
list. I mean, as we mentioned, the entire basically Washington running back unit. AJ McCarron for the Bills at quarterback.
That'll be
Isaiah
interesting.
Wynn, Patriots left tackle. A couple linemen for the Packers. Jake Ryan, linebacker for the Packers. A bunch of other guys. And it's discouraging to see, especially not only with the stars that we're listing, but with the guys that are really just fighting to the last day to get on the 90-man and then 53-man roster. To see them get injured in such a meaningless game is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I guess how else are they going to prove they're going to get on the team outside of practice?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a way. That's why I think that they have a preseason is for the younger talent, like I said, to prove their skills. But I don't know, maybe the teams just shouldn't play their starters. Maybe it should just be a bench only game. I don't know, but I guess then you don't have the players developing in game situations. So I mean,
Yeah, I mean, this is just an enormous problem that the league right now they're not really combating, but I think it's eventually going to become a really big problem, especially with 4 games in the preseason.
yeah, yeah,
It's these injuries are going to pile up, and they're eventually going to become a problem for the league when players they want to market are going to be out not from real NFL games, but games that literally mean nothing. That's when they'll start paying
yeah.
attention, when the money they start to gain from preseason games is outweighed by the money they lose from not having stars in the regular season.
Mm.
All right, so next up, we're actually going to cover some baseball here. The Nationals, the Washington Nationals, traded second baseman Daniel Murphy to the Chicago Cubs. They only got back 2 prospects and cash considerations for the price of the contract, but probably not even that much. And so this is really a losing trade. I think the Nationals, honestly, right here, I believe they're waving the white flag in the packed National League. They're 7.5 games behind Atlanta in the NL East. Your thoughts on this trade?
I think it's a great move for the Cubs. I mean, they get an all-star player, and I mean the Cubs already have arguably the second best team in the National League, second or third. And if you add another all-star to Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, all their players, I mean, it's just gonna make them better. But I don't think the Cubs are going to be the winners out of the National League because I have the Dodgers.
Yeah, the Dodgers was the team I picked in the preseason, but they've really struggled in the regular season. I think the Cubs are number 1 in the NL right now record wise, and I think
Hmm.
that'll stay the same. But yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you. Probably whenever they meet, I think the Dodgers are probably going to beat the Cubs. The addition of Manny Machado
Machado.
far outweighs the addition of Daniel
I'd
Murphy.
argue that they have a better rotation too than the Cubs.
Well, yeah, Clayton Kershaw. That's the end of your argument right there.
Kelsey Jansen, closer.
Yeah. So I think the Cubs won with this trade. The Nationals probably are going to now lose Bryce Harper in the offseason as a repercussion for this just horrible trade.
Yeah, I mean
Horrible
they were
trade.
kind of stuck in no man's land. They weren't good enough to make the World Series, but they weren't bad enough to not make the playoffs. So I mean,
Right. They're the Charlotte Hornets of the
yeah,
MLB. So they're going the tanking route probably. They're going to blow everything up, lose all their stars, all the endorsements, all the money, but they're going to try and build from the bottom. And we'll see if this works for the
yeah.
Nationals, because it's a clear white flag to the rest of the league.
I
They've
mean it
completely given up.
happens. Every team's got to do it at some point.
I mean, the rebuilding thing is going to be, it's a lot different in the MLB than it is to the NBA, because you have more of a farm system, so it could probably happen a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how the Nationals do. All right. So, next up, we have another new segment. This one is called Dude of the Week. So, basically, what happened was Luke Akins jumped from a plane about 25,000 feet in the air without a parachute.
Idiot.
Without a parachute. Luke Akins is a 42-year-old base jumper and skydiver. He's been doing that for the past 2.5 decades. And this particular stunt, he spent the last 2 years planning it. It was televised on national television. It had big name sponsors, and so he clearly made quite a bit of money from this. But like, it's still insane. Like, this is crazy.
I mean, I have one word. I'll say it again. He's an idiot. But I mean, I have a lot of respect for this guy because I'm scared of heights. Like, that is my biggest fear. I could never jump out of a plane, let alone without a parachute.
Hold on, let me tell you this. He fell with a velocity upwards of 120 miles per hour onto an 100 by 100-foot net. A net.
Imagine if that thing broke. Like,
well, it's 100 by 100 feet. You have to
Still.
hit it first.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean,
This is insane.
it
This
gives
guy,
me anxiety just watching it. Like,
I mean, granted, he's skydived and base jumped for like 25 years, but still, like, this is insane. Like, he planned it for 2 years, but I mean,
it takes a
this
special
is
person.
guts.
It takes a special person to do
It
that.
does. It really does.
I mean, would you do it?
How much money?
I don't know. Maybe
Million
a
dollars?
million. I wouldn't do it for 10 million.
I would do it for $1 million.
I would.
I can live off that.
Yeah.
I would definitely
If you
do it for
live.
$1 million. If I live. I mean, I got to train for 2 years apparently.
yeah.
To like figure out how to do this. I don't know. So we'll definitely put the link to this video in the description. Again, Luke Akins jumped out of a plane from 25,000 feet without a parachute. Gutsy guy. Definitely check out the video link
Definitely fun.
in the description.
Definitely fun to watch, but
Fun to watch,
not to
but
do.
not to do. Oh my goodness. Jeez. All right. So now to a more serious topic. Ohio State football coach Urban Meyer has been suspended 3 games for his part in the sexual assault allegations against the former wide receiver coach at Ohio State. Your thoughts on this suspension and how they handled this investigation in general?
I mean, it seems like it's been forever that this investigation's been going on. But I mean, you can't just let him go along, just letting this go, because I mean, somebody got sexually assaulted and you have to do something about it. With 3 games, I mean, I don't think it'll affect the team necessarily, but I mean, not having Urban Meyer there that's having a key piece gone, because he's probably one of the top 5 college coaches in the NCAA right now. So, I mean, 3 games doesn't really do much. I don't think it's putting like a stop to this or anything. What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, kind of the same. In a human aspect, it's really hard to quantify what denying or rejecting knowing about sexual assault allegations. It's hard to create that into a number. It's hard to like put that into a number, which the Ohio State Board of Directors has chosen 3 games. I mean, I was pretty certain they were not going to fire him. The amount of revenue he's brought to this school would make them very forgiving. A national championship will increase your leash quite a
Definitely.
bit. But yeah, it's really tough on the human side of things. Like, you want to see something done, and if this is the best they can do, I guess for me it would be acceptable. But I can definitely see how a lot of people could see this as a failure to punish and to make amends, maybe. Or it's really difficult it'll be really difficult for a lot of people to see this as just punishment for what he did, or I guess what he didn't do.
I think it'll be interesting to see opposing fans will treat Ohio State this year, like when they come to their stadium, see if they get booed or like people make vulgar signs about what happened. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see.
And talking about those 3 games that he's going to miss, it's going to be a home game against Oregon State, which he could win with a lower classman team. But then a really tough game, what is going to be a neutral site game against TCU, but it's at Cowboys Stadium, AT&T Stadium in Dallas. So it's like not really a neutral site game. It's like it's a home game that's like an extra 10-minute drive for TCU fans. And then also another huge game, which is going to be an away game at Happy Valley, Penn State. That's going to be
always a good game.
That's going to be a college game day level game.
Yeah.
So some really big games, like the bulk of their schedule, which you wouldn't really expect, but actually no, I'm looking at it wrong. It's going to be Oregon State and then Rutgers and then the TCU game. The Penn
Mm.
State game's not till later. So it's Oregon State, Rutgers, and TCU, which actually compared to what I read off on accident, that's a pretty light schedule.
Yeah,
Oregon
yeah.
State and Rutgers are probably some of the worst Power
Oh
5
yeah,
teams in FBS.
especially Rutgers. But
Rutgers is awful. They're
but
so bad.
yeah, I don't think this will necessarily affect their whole season. Like for the first 3 weeks, they'll be talked about a lot, but once it gets to the end of the season, I think Ohio State will still be in the playoffs and possibly even win it.
Yeah, I mean, winning makes people forget, but more than that, time. I think maybe not during the season, but within the next few years, I think we'll just forget it happened.
Yeah.
Like it'll just fade into the background. Unfortunately, no one was really made an example of. No one was punished thoroughly. So it's kind of a slap on the wrist for Urban Meyer, like missing 3 non-conference games, and like at least you're lucky that it's like Oregon State and Rutgers, and I guess TCU will be a tough game. But this really, I don't know if it's just punishment, but it's hard to, I don't know, come up with a true punishment for what he did. So it's really tough. And honestly, I think the Ohio State Board of Directors, I don't know, just suspending him for football games doesn't seem like
Enough.
a huge thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, 3 games. So I really don't know if they did a terrific job. I'm not opposed to what they did, but I can definitely totally see where people will come at this and be quite angry.
There's gonna be a lot
with how
of people.
it was handled.
There's gonna be a lot of people that are really mad.
And justifiably so. I mean, this was handled pretty poorly. The amount of time the investigation took, all these random clues, and when Zach Smith was fired, and then a week later the investigation starts. It's just the timing of all this was really a mess. We don't really have time to get into the investigation as a whole. We're just kind of reacting to it as the news has just broken as we're before we started recording this. And this is just a really difficult thing. We might come out with a scripted video on this in the future, just kind of discussing how this could affect sexual assault allegations to coaches and players in the future in college football. And we've seen it in other leagues, but definitely in college football, this is kind of a different thing from what we've seen before. So it'll be interesting to see how it's handled by the fans, the players, the coaches, we've said. So now moving on to our last topic of the day, the 2018 college football preseason All-American team has just been released. So I'm going to read that to you, and then we're going to discuss omissions and just different changes we probably would have made. So at quarterback from West Virginia, Will Greer. From Stanford, running back Bryce Love. From Wisconsin, running back Jonathan Taylor. From West Virginia, wide receiver David Sills V. From Ole Miss, wide receiver A.J. Brown. From Iowa, tight end Noah Fant. From Alabama, offensive tackle Jonah Williams. From Wisconsin, offensive guard Bo Benchwell. Man, I should have read that before I read that. I'm sorry, dude. Read your name wrong. From Alabama, center Ross Pierschbacher. I know that one because Alabama plays a lot. They're always talking about how Pierschbacher is like one of the greatest centers of all time.
Yep.
Anyway, from Wisconsin, offensive guard Michael Dieter. He's that guy that scored that touchdown
I feel
last season.
Yeah.
And lastly, offensive tackle Dalton Risner from K-State. Oh, and also all-purpose player Debo Samuel from South Carolina. So your thoughts on that team?
I mean, I agreed with it for the most part, but I mean, you're probably gonna see these players at the end when the awards come out. They're gonna be at the top of the list, but I mean,
it's really difficult. Like, I think despite only playing granted he played a lot of garbage time, which for Alabama is like an entire second half against a lot of teams, but just that Georgia game alone would have been enough for me to put Tua Tagovailoa on this list, to be quite honest. A lot of other guys, I think they missed quite a few Alabama running backs, both Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris, but the problem is stated in itself where it's like you got like 3 Alabama running backs that could be on this list, so then none of them are going to be on the list.
They always have great running backs.
They always have a stable of great running backs, which is insane. They've got 3 or 4 guys, again, with also Najee Harris and I think a couple other freshmen they're bringing on. This team is always really great at running back. Also from Auburn, running back Kerryon Johnson, and Florida Atlantic University running back Kevin Singletary. I thought they were both omissions that I thought were kind of worthwhile to talk about. FAU, I think, especially with playing Oklahoma in week 1, could get a lot of attention. Lane Kiffin could really make a statement if they beat Oklahoma, or at least I think they went 10-3 this season. So if they could do that again, they would garner a lot of attention for Devin Singletary. Also, Oklahoma wide receiver Marquez Brown. I thought Hollywood Brown, as he's been dubbed by a lot of announcers, I think he's going to be really electric. Maybe he just didn't play enough this season, but he's going to be a really integral part of the offense that's being taken over by Kyler Murray. Just any other guys you thought they kind of missed on?
I mean, I agree with the Tuatonga Viola. I don't know how to say his name. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Tuatonga Vailoa.
Vailoa.
Go with it.
I mean, I think he should have definitely been the quarterback on the list because, I mean, we saw what he could do in the national championship last year. And, I mean, we don't know who's going to be the starter with Jalen Hurts. And, I mean, I think he should be the one to start, but that's a different topic.
Yeah, maybe also that's another thing where, like I said, with the Alabama running backs, they've got 2 quarterbacks that could be on this list. So
I mean, you could probably have every position an Alabama player if you really wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, that's also the problem. They also don't play enough to rack up the stats to be put on these kinds of lists or to break records. All right, so moving on to the defense from Clemson, defensive end Clelin Ferrell. From Clemson, defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. From Houston, defensive tackle Ed Oliver. From Ohio State, defensive end Nick Bosa. From LSU, linebacker Devin White. From Wisconsin, linebacker TJ Edwards. From Michigan, linebacker Devin Bush. From Miami University, safety Jaquan Johnson. From Washington, safety Taylor Rapp. From Florida State University, cornerback Levante Taylor. And from LSU, cornerback Greedy Williams.
I think I'll be interested in knowing how Nick Bosa does this year, if he can live up to his brother's name and see what he can do this season.
Yeah, I think he's going to be one of those really special players. Also interesting, no Alabama players on this defense, and only 2 of the 4 monsters from the Clemson D-line on this. And actually some Michigan guys missing that I'll talk about here in a minute, but I really like this secondary. I think college football this year, especially with the seniors that could be drafted, there's going to be kind of not too few, but there's not going to be a lot of guys that are going to be defensive backs that are going to be NFL quality this year. So these guys will really have to show up if they want to, make a name for themselves. Yeah. But it'll be pretty easy for literally anyone in the country to make it on the postseason list for All-Americans. And so now moving on to a couple omissions we had. Michigan defensive end Rashawn Gary, Clemson defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, Alabama outside linebacker Anthony Jennings, and Georgia cornerback DeAndre Baker. So we had a couple of those guys that we really thought could have made that list. But just in general, I think this All-America team was pretty well built, and it's always interesting to see who stays on the list, who gains recognition and gets on the list. If any of our omissions will either end up omissions again or will end up on that list. So anything else you'd like to add to that?
I'm excited for college football season.
I'm really excited.
Just for football in general.
Just for football in general, but college football. We'll probably have a couple of videos come out before. I know there's a couple games this upcoming weekend on the 25th, and then football starts September 1st is the Saturday it starts, but there's games on the 29th on that Thursday, I think that is. So no, I think it's the 30th. But
Friday.
Yeah, there's even games on Thursday, even some ranked matchups, I think.
Really?
So, I'm just really excited to just come home any day of the week and just watch some, whether it's MAC or like Conference USA, I don't care, Sun Belt, I will watch college football. And I am so excited for this. We're going to have a ton of videos out. The podcast is going to turn into like college football NFL Central here in a couple months before NBA starts. Like,
excited for that too.
Yeah, I'm very excited for all the college football. We'll definitely have a lot of college football videos coming out before that September 1st kind of start date that's set, and also just during the season we're going to be talking a lot on it on the podcast and in scripted videos. So we're really excited for that. So I guess that's it for episode 2 of Dudes Being Guys Sports Podcast. My name is Marco.
And I'm Easton Nelson.
And we're signing off.